Frank from Illinois wants to know, what's the company's track record for paying claims after major hurricanes in South Florida?
It depends on the carriers, but the most important thing, when you're picking a carrier, especially in terms of hurricane claims, is to make sure you get an admitted carrier. Because if you get an admitted carrier, even if they ran out of money, you got the state of Florida's backing them. The state of Florida would step in and pay. So if it's an admitted carrier, you're okay. It really doesn't. I mean, not that it doesn't matter. The rest of it is just icing on the cake. After that, but you want an admitted carrier one, and then you want to just check your wind deductible. The lower the wind deductible, obviously, the better. 2% is better than 5%, and I have some carriers on new construction to go down to 1%. Southern Oak specifically will go down to 1%. I know that. Or they'll do a straight dollar amount deductible sometimes on new construction. So, in paying wind claims, that's it. You just want an admitted carrier. Now, paying water damage claims, that goes back to the limited water damage coverage. You got to have an agent that's going to tell you what limitations there are on the policy, especially in terms of water damage. That's the big one that they like to, sublimit or exclude and things like that. You want to make sure that policy has ideally full water damage. Sometimes you can't. Sometimes the house is built in the 50s and no carrier wants to write it with full water. And then you can get, some carriers will do a percentage water damage. So they do 5% water damage instead of 10,000. So 5% of your dwelling coverage in water damage. So, if you got $1 million house, they're going to give you $50,000, right? No, am I doing the math right?
Yeah, you got it. Yeah.
So, you gotta think of it like that. And then in terms of, paying the claims, if it's an admitted carrier, they all have to follow the same rules because the state of Florida highly regulates insurance. So they have to pay out the claim by 90 days, things along those lines. So, in terms of track record, certain carriers are better than others, but at the end of the day, you just want the most comprehensive policy. So if your coverages are more comprehensive, even if it takes you a little bit longer to get the money, it's worth it, in my opinion.
So a lot of times what I've heard you guys communicate is this carrier is better because of coverage.
Right.
Comprehensive coverage. So usually the conversation isn't like, is Southern Oaks better than Universal? Right. It's more like, okay, what policy am I going to get with each one of these, and what are the prices, and what are the exclusions that are different,
exactly.
or the coverage.
Exactly.
So I think that's how you think about what carrier to work with if you have options. Frankly, you don't always have options in South Florida.
Right.
You
Sometimes
have options.
This is all I got.
So. You have options, but maybe the prices are very different, so you don't really have an option.
Right.
Usually it's like, hey, this guy is crushing it in the market, or this carrier is crushing it in the market right now. They're offering more affordable rates and premiums.
Right.
And so that's why these guys are doing a lot more business, and that's why they're kind of the only option, unless you want to pay $3,000 or $4,000 more a year. Then we can go with this other guy, and the coverage limits are a little better, this, that, and the other thing. But your call. What do you want to do?
Yeah. The one trap that a lot of people fall into, especially out-of-state buyers, is they want an AM Best rated carrier. And, I get that because they're used to dealing with, outside of Florida. But the problem is most of the homeowners carriers in Florida, the way they regulate them and the way they make them have their finances don't go through AM Best. They go through Demotech. And then when you say, this is Demotech rated, but it's A+, but it's an admitted carrier, and a lot of out-of-state buyers are like, no, I want AM Best. I'm going to go with Chubb and pay 3 times as much because I want AM Best. And I'm like, look, Chubb isn't, whatever Chubb, whoever the surplus lines carrier is, I don't want to name Chubb specifically, but, they're not backed by the state of Florida. They're not regulated by the Department of Financial Regulation in Florida. So it's a lot more difficult if they try to, mess with you on a claim, to go after them. If you don't have the backing of the state. In Florida, you can just go to Department of Financial Regulation and they'll investigate. And if these companies are playing games on the claim, they fine them. I don't want to, I forget who it was, but they got like $1 million fine because they were taking too long to pay claims. So that's what happens. So if you have the state behind you, it's a lot easier to get paid out. And if the coverages are more comprehensive, you're going to get more money. So at the end of the day, that's really what matters the most. AM Best rating. I mean, some admitted carriers they do have AM Best ratings, but some don't. But don't let that be the deal breaker. If you have the same price and one's AM Best A and the other one's Demotech A, maybe you want to go with the AM Best A, but don't pay double the price or that much more money for an AM Best rated. It's not worth it.
That's great. I just learned something. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So number one is admitted carriers.
Admitted. That's the most important thing.
Yeah. And so hopefully that helps you guys clarify your thoughts around how do you choose the right carrier for you if you have options, because it's not always the case.
Right.